Luke, the Passion Translation, Chapter 9. Jesus summoned together his 12 apostles and imparted to them authority over every demon and the power to heal every disease. Then he commissioned them to proclaim God's kingdom and to heal the sick, to demonstrate that the kingdom had arrived. As he sent them out, he gave them these instructions: take nothing extra on your journey, just go as you are. Don't carry a staff, a backpack, food, money, not even a change of clothes. Whatever home welcomes you as a guest, remain there and make it your base of ministry. And wherever your ministry is rejected, you are to leave that town and shake the dust off your shoes as a testimony before them. The apostles departed and went into the villages with the wonderful news of God's kingdom, and they healed diseases wherever they went. Now Herod, the governor, was confused and perplexed when he heard reports of all the miracles of Jesus and his apostles. Many were saying, John the Baptizer has come back to life. Others, this is the prophet Elijah who has reappeared, or one of the prophets of the old who has risen from the dead. These were the rumors circulating the land. Herod exclaimed, "Who is this man? I keep hearing about him over and over. It can't be the prophet John. I had him beheaded." So Herod was very eager to meet Jesus. Months later, the apostles returned from their ministry tour and told Jesus all the wonders and miracles that they had witnessed. Jesus, wanting to be alone with the 12, quietly slipped away with them towards Bethsaida. Crowds soon found out about it and took off after him. When they caught up with Jesus, he graciously welcomed them all, taught them more about God's kingdom, and healed all who were sick. As the day wore on, the 12 came to Jesus and told him, "It's getting late. You should send the crowds to the surrounding villages and the farms to get something to eat and find shelter for the night. There is nothing to eat here in the middle of nowhere." Jesus responded, "You have the food to feed them." They replied, "All we have are 5 small loaves of bread and 2 dried fishes. Do you really expect us to go and buy food for all these people? There are nearly 5,000 men here with women and children." He told the disciples, "Have them all sit down in groups of 50 each." After everyone was seated, Jesus took 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and gazing into the heavenly realm, he gave thanks for the food. Then, in the presence of his disciples, he broke off pieces of bread and fish and kept giving more to each disciple to give to the crowd. It was multiplying before their very eyes. So everyone ate until they were filled, and afterwards the disciples gathered up the leftovers. It came exactly to 12 baskets full. One time, Jesus was praying in a quiet place with his disciples nearby. He went to them and asked, "Who do people think that I am?" They answered, "Some are convinced that you're a prophet John who has returned. Others say that you're Elijah, or perhaps one of the Jewish prophets brought back from the dead." Jesus then asked them, "But who do you believe that I am?" Peter said, "You are the Anointed One, God's Messiah." Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell to anyone yet, saying, "The Son of Man is destined to experience great suffering and face complete rejection by Jewish leaders and religious hierarchy. He will be killed and raised back to life on the 3rd day." Jesus said to all of his followers, "If you truly desire to be my disciple, you must disown your life completely, embrace my cross as your own, and surrender to my ways. For if you choose self-sacrifice, giving up your lives for the glory, you will discover true life. But if you choose to keep your lives for yourself, you will lose what you try to keep. Even if you gained all the wealth and power of this world and all the things it could offer you, yet you lose your soul in process, what good is that? So why then are you ashamed of being my disciple? Are you ashamed of revelation truth I give you? I, the Son of Man, will one day return in my radiant brightness, with holy angels and the splendor and majesty of my Father. On that day, I will be ashamed of everyone who has been ashamed of me. I promise you this, there are some of you standing here right now who will not die until you have witnessed the presence and the power of God's kingdom realm. 8 days later, Jesus took Peter, Jacob, and John and climbed a high mountain to pray. As he prayed, his face began to glow until a blinding glory streamed from him. A radiant glory illuminated his entire body. His brightness became so intense that it made his clothing blinding white as multiple flashes of lightning. All at once, two men appeared in glorious splendor, Moses and Elijah. They spoke with Jesus about his soon departure from this world and the things that the Father destined him to accomplish in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions had become very drowsy, but they became fully awake when they saw the glory and splendor of Jesus standing there and the two men with him. As Moses and Elijah were about to return to heaven, Peter blurted out, "Master, this is amazing to see the three of you here together. Why don't we stay here and set up three shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and another one for Elijah?" While Peter was still speaking, a radiant cloud of glory formed above them and overshadowed them. As the glory cloud enveloped them, they were struck with fear. Then the voice of God thundered from within the clouds, "This is my Son, my beloved one. Listen carefully to all that he says to you." When the thunderous voice faded away and the clouds disappeared, Jesus was standing there alone. Peter, Jacob, and John were awestruck, but they didn't say a word to anyone about what they had seen. The next day, a massive crowd was waiting at the foot of the mountain to meet them. A man in the crowd shouted desperately, "Please, teacher, I beg you, do something about my son, my only son." An evil spirit possesses him and makes him scream out in torment, and hardly ever leaves him alone. It throws him into convulsions and he foams at the mouth. When it finally does leave him, he is left with horrible bruises. I begged your disciple to drive it out of him, but they didn't have enough power to do it. Jesus responded, "You are unbelieving people with no faith. You twist your lives with lies that have turned you away from doing the right things. How much longer should I remain here, offering hope to you?" Then he said to the man, "Bring your son to me." As the boy approached, the demon slammed him to the ground and threw him into a violent convulsion. Jesus sternly commanded the demon to come out of the boy, and it left him immediately. Jesus healed the boy of his injuries and returned him to his father, saying, "Here is your son." Everyone was awestruck and stunned to see such power and majesty of God flowing through Jesus. Everyone marveled, trying to process what they have just witnessed. Jesus then turned to his disciples and said, "Listen carefully and let these words sink into your hearts. The Son of Man is about to be betrayed and surrendered to the authority of men." But his disciples could not grasp the meaning of what he was saying, for it was a veiled mystery to them, and they were too embarrassed to ask him to explain it. The disciples began to argue and become preoccupied over who would be the greatest amongst them. Fully aware of their innermost thoughts, Jesus called a little child to his side and said to them, "If you tenderly care for this little child on my behalf, you would be tenderly caring for me. And if you care for me, you are honoring my Father who sent me. The one who is the least important in your eyes is actually the most important of all." The disciple John said, "Master, we found someone casting out demons using your name, and we tried to stop him because he doesn't follow you as we do." Jesus responded, "You shouldn't have hindered him, for anyone who is not against you is your friend." Jesus let nothing distract him from departing for Jerusalem, because the time for him to be lifted up drew near, and he was full of passion to complete his mission there. So he sent the messengers ahead of him as envoys to a village of the Samaritans. But as they approached the village, the people turned them away. They would not allow Jesus to enter, for he was on his way to worship in Jerusalem. When the disciple Jacob and John realized what was happening, they returned to Jesus and said, "Lord, if you wanted to, you could command the fire to fall down from heaven, just as Elijah did, and destroy all these wicked people." Jesus rebuked them sharply, saying, "Don't you realize what spews out of your hearts when you say that? The Son of Man did not come to destroy life, but to bring life to earth." So they went to another village instead. On their way, someone came up to Jesus and said, "I want to follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Yes, but remember this. Even animals in a field have holes in the ground to sleep in, and the birds have their nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay down his head." Jesus then turned to another and said, "Come, be my disciple." He replied, "Some day I will, Lord, but allow me first to fulfill my duty as a good son and wait until my father passes away." Jesus told them, "Don't wait for your father's burial. Let those who are already dead wait for their death. As for you, go and proclaim everywhere that God's kingdom has arrived." Still another said to him, "Lord, I want to follow you too, but first let me go home and say goodbye to my entire family." Why do you keep looking back to your past and having second thoughts about following me? If you turn back, you're not fit for the kingdom of God.